Okay, so we're going to reconstruct the what was it? The woaj singles for that comp.
Yeah, 20.7 beat of 9 woaj.
Yeah, that's insane, right? So the first scramble is this. It sucks. What was it? Like 868 or something.
Yeah, it was either 868 or 888.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Okay,
It's
so
bad.
doesn't matter. It sucks. So the for this axis it was 8 bad. The good edges are here. So this is a 4-move EO, and then what I did was I did B because everything on the back is bad, and then now you have this. So F2 D prime F gives you EO, right? And then this isn't any RZP case, but if you see that,
Oh no, it's 4C60.
that's true, but it like sucks.
It's bad ARM because it's like AR
Yeah.
corners and then like the edges are just not it.
Yeah, actually, wait, this is not too bad. Wait, why didn't I try this? Okay, anyway, you can do UL to like orient this, so you get 2C, 3C, 2E in like 6 moves. But I mistraced that it would be like kind of okay, because if you switch, you get this, you have this thing going on, and then these 2 corners. So U, R2, and then L prime, D prime, L gives you DR in 11. It's DR in 11, but on this kind of scramble, DR in 11 is fine. And I saw that this is a 4B2, right? But the case on inverse isn't that good, so I switched. And wait, this is a miscram.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Take 2.
Yes, take 2. I miscrambled that, but whatever. So if you switch to normal, it looks like this. It's 4C6E, so we should look at the oriented pieces. They are like here. So what you need to do is just R2 to set up this big L shape, attach this corner here, and then U prime R2 with D prime. So that's HTR in 16 moves. And then what I saw next was, if you just do like R2, it makes this square, D2, and then, oops, yeah, just like that. And that gives me a 22. Okay, so the second scramble was equally as bad. It was also like 688 or something.
No, that's not true. I think it was worse.
Really?
I actually think it was the worst scramble of all time, like by far.
Yeah. Okay, so, but it somehow was better than the first one. I don't know why, but anyway, if you look at green front on inverse, the bad edges are like here. So I can just put this one here, do a B, now it's 4 bad, and then D prime, L2 puts them all on the same face, and F prime. This gives you EO in 5, and it's 7C8E. And then if you do like the ARM tracing stuff, you see that it's ARM minus 3C1E if you switch, which is not bad. So I switched for this, and it looks like this, right? And to try to solve, to try to set up to the trigger, first I did B2 to create line and square, but that kind of sucked. So I figured if I add an extra L2, maybe it'll be okay. So L2, B2, and indeed it was okay. So D, and then L, D, R. That gives me the DR. At first I thought this was a 4Q, so I didn't work on it. But after finding a backup 23 from some other DR, I came back to this, but I came back to it on the inverse. Then I saw like immediately it was so blocky, so I just gave it a try. I did U2, L2, U, R2, then I was like, wait, this is 16 to T-perm. So just by reversing the last few moves, D prime, R2, you can just cancel into like the out, R2, U, R2, U prime, R2. Then it's this case, so F2, U prime, F2, D, R2, which is basically an 11 minus 6, which means that from a 16 move to T-perm, I solved it in 5 more moves to get a 21. And then I found this at like 15 minutes, so I wrote it down. And then with like 5 minutes left, I realized that you can actually rearrange this into a 20 to slice. But I didn't manage to solve it in time, but it turns out you can't do better than 21 on this DR anyway. So all is good. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so round 1, A3, this was the 19 I found. We're going to skip over the ear. It was a sprint scramble. It was 2, 4, 4. There was 1 2 mover, a lot of 3 movers, and actually 2 NIS 3 movers, and this was one of them. So this was D on normal, and then when you switch for white front, it's just F2. Hang on, I'm like so not in frame. I'm like over here. Yeah. But yeah, F2 and then D, and that gives the 3 move EO that I'm talking about. And then on like orange top, if you do B or B prime, but for the solution B prime is like the move of choice. You get 3C, 2E in 4 moves. I didn't trace anything on top of that. It's a sprint scramble, you don't have time for that. So I switched, and here we have like this kind of configuration with the pair and then the corner and like the worst of the 3 spots, I guess. But this can be a good case depending on the placement of this, and in this case it was the ideal one, so you can do L2 and then either U2 or D2 to get the 3-move case. In this case, U2 is the better one, because after F prime, L prime, F prime, you get 4C, 6C instead of, I think, 4E. I did end up checking both, but you'll see this one's a bit better, because when you switch and you do all those moves doing B prime instead of B, it's just 3 more moves to HTR. Love that. And then the way I found the 6 half-turn finish, you can find it as like LR, but I'm not a floppy reduction respecter, so I just like looked at the FB layers since there's potential for double slice stuff, and you can see there's a lot of blocks, like 2 pairs or 4 pairs, and some stuff going on. And then, yeah, you do like U2 to make a square, and then you have this kind of case where you make the second square with this pair, and then it's like floppy reduction type thing, and we just win. Hooray.
That's the only sub 20 single for the whole comp, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think, next best result was like 21 or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just tough, like, it's just the, like,
Yeah, that's
3/4 move EO casino.
There's so many like 9+3s that you have to.
Yeah, I will say, one thing I will add is that I didn't really have a standout DR on this attempt. I had like between like 8 and 10 DRs in like the 9 to 10 move range with like very favorable subsets, and this was like one of the last like 3 or 4 that I wanted to check.
Okay.
Alright, now on to round 2, attempt 1. This was the 20 that I found. So this scramble, I don't remember if it was like good or bad, but it had a 3-mover, so you know, it can't be the worst thing in the world. Again, kind of skipping a bit over the EO, but if you do D on inverse, so for white front, you get a 3-move EO with BD, and then you can also extend with U2 BD, which is nice. So I did B and then D, and then for the blue top version, I saw that you can do, because I was just trying like every like somewhat possible viable like, you know, RZP in 5. So you can do BR to give 4C, 6C, and then I notice everything on top and bottom is white only, and then these edges are nice, so it is indeed a JZP. So from there I switched, and yeah, after you do that D move, it's just 4 more moves to DR. You can do F2 and then L, B2R. And I think originally I thought this was a 3Q DR, but it's actually 4A2, and it's 6E, which is the like second worst one, but still it's a DR9, you have to check it. And we're kind of skipping over a cube here, but I went back to normal, and then after like BD, BR, I saw you can do F prime, and that reduces it to 1Q. And a big strategy that I've kind of implemented as of late, which I haven't really documented in my recent YouTube videos, is reducing to 1Q, and then for DRs that have like some healthy number of variations, trying to look for kind of a quote-unquote HTR skip. So when you go back to inverse with that F pre-move to give 1Q, once you set it up so that LB2R will re-enter DR, I sort of just looked at the other axis and saw that it's a 4C, 4E case where like you would actually want to do like an L prime or an R prime as the first move instead. So the way I did it was I did R prime to bring this kind of configuration of 3 pieces together. So then you can do like a D2 to make the pair, and then you can either do L2 or R2 to kind of get that HDR skip sort of thing I'm describing. And just to sort of quickly illustrate like how this is working on the other axis, you can sort of see it's just a variation of, or not a variation rather, an extension of the 4C6E that uses like the preemptive 2E2E insertion. But yeah, from here I did L2, U2, and then you do L, and then if you just do a B on top of that, you get HTR in 13, I think? Yeah, 13. And then looking at the blue faces, this is just kind of like a strange case. I saw you can do like, because you have like this square and then this pair, you can do like F2, U2, and then it looks like it's bad because of like some 2E stuff going on. So I tried doing an L2, and then once I did, oh wait, no, sorry, I didn't do L2, I did D2. And then when you do D2, now I kind of know this case from experience because it's like a pattern that manifests during like the 8 move 2E 2E alternative valve. So from here the solution is you want to do an L2 to like bring this pair down, and then you are 1 move away from like a blocky fish. So you can do D2, we have blocky fish, and then this one is just 4 more moves to solved with L2, F2, U2, B2. So that gives a 20 final. It is technically 19 to slice, but there's no way to get a +0. I think there's like 2 or 3 ways to get a 20, but that's it.
It's funny that you mentioned that you mistraced this because I thought this was a 4C4 at first when I got this DR. Then when I switched, I'm like, why is it A on both sides?
Yeah, I think it's because we both do like corner case record, and when it was, because it was naturally like a slashes case, like those cases I just like skill issue like out of my mind like every time.
Okay, let's go.
Alright, so round 2 A2, this was the second 20 that I found. I will also just quickly mention that this was the one solve across level 9 where someone other than me or Wen contributed to woaj. Both Yue-Lu and Li Qifeng found this, maybe not this exact 20, there's a few ways you could do it, but they all sort of follow the same structure. So for this one, the EO I did was an 8 bad on orange front, and you have these 2 good edges here, and then you have a good edge there, kind of on top of this one, and then 1 back over there. This has 4 total 4 movers. The one I went with was F, and you can do L, U prime, and I did R prime instead of R, just because that's how it kind of panned out. And then on the blue top version, I saw that D prime would give 4C, 4E, and 5 with a favorable ARM subset. Yeah, this is 1C, 1E, so that can be good in many contexts. So from there I switched to inverse, and where am I? There we go. Yeah. Okay, so this is just kind of a special case because so the optimal solution in this like specific layout goes through 4C60. It's kind of a neat illustration of like some of the ARM stuff because 1C, 1E ARM for 4C60 can be a 4 mover optimal. So even if you don't know these fancy triggers, you can kind of use that logic to kind of just experiment and get there like independently. So the way I did it, I just know this case from like years of experience. You can do U, and then you have all of the components for 4C60, column, 2 pairs, and edge in the correct spot. So I then did B prime, and you can either do UR to D or whatever the other one is. It doesn't matter because you can kind of account for it later. The one that ends up leading to the best solution, actually no, that's not even true because there's a rewrite at the end, but yeah. Regardless, I'm just yapping. UR to D, 10 move DR, 1/4 turn corners, and it's 4 edges. So it's a true 1Q DR. And since I had started for 20, I was quite happy to start looking at this the second I found it. I went back to normal, and then if you do D prime instead of D as like the RZP creating move, you have 4 more moves to HTR. We have like these 2 pairs, and then 2 corners, and then this will give a good E-slice placement. So you can do R2, and then just do U2, D2, and then B prime. And note that because the sequence on inverse was like UR2D, it's a good idea to consider what the white and yellow layers look like. And in this case, it's quite a nice case. So I see like we've got these 2 pairs here, and I know that like a common theme with just this kind of shape is to try and also make 2 pairs on the other side. And then you can often get a short finish as long as there's no need for a 2E insertion, even if there is, like there's often tricks at play. But then here you can kind of just do square building, R2 makes 1, L2 makes another, and then you can do U2, F2, and then you get E-slice in 19. This is just an illustration of like how I found the rewrite in real time. So this is what the cube looks like after U, B prime on inverse, switch, and then the DR plus HTR. And I essentially just started doing the moves. So like R2, L2 is how it starts. And then you could either do like U2 or D2. I just tried U2 as the first one. And then you can do like F2. I'm pretty sure you misscrambled this.
Oh shit.
Oh no.
Okay, it's okay.
All right, we're back. I will just quickly add that it wasn't Wen's fault. I was actually the one that scrambled that cube and just like, I didn't even scramble it wrong. I just forgot to do a move. So yeah. Anyway, picking up where we left off, this is what the cube looks like after U, B prime and inverse switch, EO moves, RZP move, and then the HTR moves. So I just started kind of doing the moves like F2, R2, L2. Nothing there can be sliced, and then just kind of looking visually at the cube, you can sort of intuit how you should best like pair up the pieces like in a block building fashion. I saw that instead of like U2, F2, you would want to do D2, B2, as that's how you make progress with the E slice. So you can do like D2, B2, and then you can do D prime, L2, U, D2, and that sort of amounts to a +1 rewrite, and that's how I personally got the 20 for A2.
Yeah, I think you can also just like somehow blocky fish the these moves over here and then get a 20 as well. If I'm not wrong, that's what Yiwei and Li Qi did.
Yeah, I will say as well, like, yeah, because there are a few 20s, but also just the visual look of the sequence of moves kind of, I don't know, it gives you like the false sense that there's like a lot of potential for rewrites. Like
Yeah.
there was at least like 30-second period where I thought there was 18 potential,
Yeah.
which was kind of freaking me out, but not to be.
Oh well. Okay, so this last solve, the EO count was 268, so it was like kind of a little bit worse than the other two, but at the same time there's a 2 bet, so I thought it might still be okay. So I'm gonna skip a bit, but like on normal, I noticed that if you do a U, then and you switch, you have 3 more moves to EO. But actually, I found the one that's like R switch U-L-R first, and then I kind of concluded that this was possible. But anyway, it's still possible to find it in both ways. So if you switch to inverse after doing a U, you get 8 bad and the good edges are here. So you just need to do like R or R prime, but I did R, then U prime D, and right away you see that this is actually in like JZP already. So you have, I mean, on red front is in JZP and all the misoriented pieces are here. If you know your HTR tricks, this is like the slightly obscure 5 move like 4B2 trigger like this, right? This is a 9 move to 4C3. So I figured like, but I mean, I couldn't find anything from this. So I figured I would try to switch to normal and try to do the JZP from here also. And if you switch to normal, you get this case. It kind of looks like a 1Q 4C2E case, which is a 6 move to HTR. But I know that because this gives you a 4C3, I should try to do it in like the 4C3 way to try to get a better DR case. So what I did was L to make it 4C2E, and then D2. What? No, not D2. D2 to like create this block. And then if you just do a U2 here, this gives you like a 4C4. So I decided to apply like the fake HDR correction thing. L2, F2, and then what I did L prime F2 L first, okay? So this gives you the 4B2 in 11. And I'm gonna skip over slightly a bit again, but I know that on inverse, since you can just do a quarter turn straight away and it becomes 4E 4C. I did that and I switched back to normal, which gives me this 1Q 4E 4C case. And you can kind of tell that like if I just move this one misoriented edge over here, it's like 3 more moves to HDR, right? So I figured let's just do that. Let's just add a commutator like right away, then we'll remove it and then try to slice it with the M slice stuff going on there. So I did F2. Actually what I did was I did F2 D2 and then I kind of like sliced it right here. So L R prime D2 L prime R, which gets everything onto the same face. And then I did B to get HTR in, I don't even know how many moves this is because there's the com there, but like I wasn't counting at this point, but I feel like it's probably a 15 to HTR or something.
Well, I mean, it's something that could, in theory, be solved in 0 moves.
Yeah, exactly. So like I wasn't too concerned about the length. So again, it's the same thing as what Jay mentioned. You see these 2 pairs and then this edge. So I mean, instead of doing like the create 2 more pairs first, right? What I just did was I started with L2 R2 and then I was like, oh, this is really easy. So U2 B2 U2. And this is S slice in some number of moves. Honestly, when I got this, I didn't even know how many moves it was. I just like...
Yeah, sometimes you just vibe it. Like, you can't count the moves. You're just like, this feels short.
Yeah. So, what I did next was I undid all that M slice stuff. So R prime L, D2, R, L prime, D2, F2. L prime, F2, L, F2, L2, D2, L prime. So I undid all of that and I tried to rewrite this. At first it was kind of random because I felt like if this one pass wasn't going to work, I was going to have to eliminate the F2, D2, F2 and then work through it again. But what I did was instead of doing L, I did R and then just rebuild all the stuff, I guess. F2, R2, D2 and then sort of do like, let me read this, L prime, D2, R. And then from here I was like, oh, that's amazing, the M slice managed to solve in 0. So then when I counted this, I realized it was S slice in 20 and then I was like, yo, that's pretty good. Yeah, unfortunately I am very lazy to reconstruct the S slice, but it was a +1, so like just don't bother.
Yeah, I mean, alright, as a little bonus, I'm going to show the 22 that I got on this attempt. It wasn't a woaj contribution, but I mean 20.67 mean is probably noteworthy enough. I will also say this was the unique optimal for this like dr/start quote unquote that I was working on, so that's satisfying in and of itself. It's a pretty straightforward solution. So the too bad is on, this is just the scramble on normal. There's a bad edge here and a bad edge here. There's a bunch of ways to do it in 4 moves, but the one I went with was a D move insertion, and then you can do BUB, and that gives EO in 4, and it's also instant RZP on orange top. And it's kind of a weird looking case, but just due to like some like recent skill issues I've had, I kind of had this sort of case on my mind. And I know that like one possible idea for things that visually look like this is you can try to reduce like an R2 F2R. In this case, you would do that by like bringing these headlights to form with this edge while creating like a adjacent E-slice placement. So you can do like R2, U2. And then when you do L prime, it's just 3 more moves to DR a couple of different ways. There's also extensions that are possible. I tried a lot of shenanigans with this out of desperation, but nothing to be done, unfortunately. The one I went with was U2, B2, and then U prime. That gives DR in 10, and it's 4C3. And we're on the side of the scramble where you typically want to start. So actually, I'm just going to undo that U prime as a U. So here you can do 1/4 turn to get the ideal kind of path into 4B2. But that didn't give me anything, so I tried like doing that sort of preemptive E2 thing. So it's like U prime, D2, L prime, and that also does the same thing. From here I switched, and it's just 4 moves to HTR. You can do F2, and then R prime, U2, R, and that gives HTR in 16. And this is like, there's like a fish shape here with a big square, and then like a pair here that can form down there. And often what you'll try to do, there's also this pair here. This isn't actually the correct move. It's just, there's a lot of cases that visually look similar that we just sort of know are easy. But yeah, after the HDR I did F2, and then we have like this kind of, these 2 P shapes. And it looks similar to FR, but it's not quite because we don't have a square here. Now, I just know from experience, you can solve this optimally by making this square, and then you have the 2 squares case. And then from here you can do like L2, F2, U2, and that gives M slice in 21. I'll also just quickly show like the rewrite because it's convenient to do so. After U2, instead of doing L2, F2, you can just kind of see that R2, B2 will make progress on the M slice. So you do like R2, B2, B2, and then R2, L2, and then the L move will cancel on normal to give a 22 final. And with that, I shattered the 21 barrier, hooray. Alright, on to finals, so round 3, attempt 1. This was the 22 I found. On inverse, I don't remember the edge count. If I recall correctly, this first scramble was quite bad. I know a lot of people were complaining about it. And at this point, I'd already done 6 attempts. I'd already gotten pretty much all I wanted out of this competition, so I was very like undisciplined with my like breadth of search. I kind of just checked like the most basic stuff off rip and went deep into those, and it paid off. Or not so much that it paid off, but like it didn't bite me, because this kind of thing can be kind of dangerous at times. Anyways, I did white front EO. It's 8 bad. It's a similar case to before. We have the good edges here. Actually, it's not quite the same case. It's a 8 bad that has 4 possible 4 optimals, but they all sort of follow the same structure. You can do F or F prime, U or U prime, and then BD. So I did F prime, but then I did U, and then B, and then D prime, just because it happens to be the move that lines up with the solution. There was nothing remarkable, but again, this is such a bad scramble that I am down. Actually, that's okay. Yeah, no, there's nothing remarkable about the EO other than that it's short on a bad scramble, so I switched. And then I just did F, and I saw that gave not only 4C, 4E, but a case that's just good on this side of the scramble. I don't even think it's a good ARM subset. No, it's 2C, 2E, which is like almost never good. I would imagine there's like one of the three subtypes is like 7 optimal potentially, but I could be wrong. But that doesn't matter because on this side it's bussin'. So we just did L2, D2. You can either do L2 or R2 because of the diagonal placement of these edges. The one I did was L2, D2, L2, and then R to put that column in there, and then a B. And I found the 10 plus 3. That's all I need to do, just need to find the 10 plus 3. And it's actually a really good case. It's 2C3, it's 4E, and it's a 6 mover case. And it's one that's very variation heavy. And also because these corners kind of stack on top of each other, like in this sort of context, you can insert a half tone here or here and get a healthy amount of stuff to check in like a short number of moves, which is nice. And one of those was what led to the M slice in 21. So you can do F2, is just like a random move before doing the trigger. You can do R to enter this 4B2, 4E case with the most variations of equal move count. And then the one I did was F2 instead of B2. And then after the R, you can then do F2 or B2. I did F2, you can then do U2. And then L gives htr-lr 17. And it's actually a floppy reduction skip, which is quite nice. So this is a case where you can essentially just make these two squares like this. And then you can do B2, D2, B2. And that gives M slice in 21. And then I like rewrote it in +1. I don't care to show that, sorry.
I should have switched that,
Real.
Nah, too bad.
Alright, so for round 3A2, this was the 22 that I found. I got kind of fortunate on this. Like the way I kind of think of this solve in my mind is like, if I didn't find this DR, I would have lost the comp because all I had was a safety 24 from a 9+5. So kind of just, you know, had fortune in my favor on this day. This was a 4-4-8, which conventionally would be quite a exciting scramble. But in reality, it was like, there was no 3-move EOs and there was no like standout DRs. The only like standout DR was honestly the 9+5s, which is like not the kind of standout you'd want. Yeah, so on inverse, so this is inverse scramble for orange front, it's 4 bad, and also all of the edges occupy like the L and R faces, and it's in such a way that you can solve EO with like U2, D2, F2, B2, RL move group, which has some useful properties which I'm going to kind of showcase in a moment. The version of the EO I did was R, U2, F2, L. I'll just quickly like show like what's actually going on. So like you're turning 4 bad into a different 4 bad by doing R, and then that gives you like this 3-move type case, which you can do with U2, F2, L. There's a bunch of variations that all follow this structure. And if you've done DR for like any meaningful length of time, you'll kind of know like, even without understanding like the theory, that EOs like this can often feel very samey, and you almost feel like you're wasting time like checking all of them as thoroughly as one another, especially if like one of like the first like 2 or 3 are just not promising whatsoever. And one observation I made on like, I think the first version of this EO I checked was that on the blue side, if you do a D, you not only get 4C4E in 5, you get AR minus 2C1E, and you get the B subtype because 3 of these corners have yellow on them and then this one doesn't, which is the case that could in theory be 2 moves. And the stats for this like combination of subsets and stuff is like one of the best ones like just in like the combo chart period. So the decision I ended up taking on this solve, because I was really just struggling to find like anything like remotely viable, I decided to like find like this sort of type of RZP in 5 from every like EO that followed this structure. So there's like 4 total variations. You can do like R and then U2 D2, or then you can do L or F2 B2, etc. And I think it was actually the very last one of these that I switched for, which gave me the DR I used for my final. So this is kind of a weird looking case. We've got like headlights here and then like this fake column with a pair, and you've got headlights over here. The solution that I took was kind of pretty much like the first one you would try if you were going to sort of intuit something. I did R2 to make this kind of shape. I can't remember what the TCLL name is from like Chris Olsen's website back in the day. I think it's like turtle or something. But yeah, you do R2 and then you can do U2 to make a column, and then you can do another R2 to make another column, and that makes these E-slice edges line up nicely. For the other three that I tried, like if you follow that structure, like you just get doom E-slice placements, which is not very fun. But then from there, F, B2, and then D, and then it was DR in 11, 2C4, 2E. And again, since all I had was like a 24 safety, I was willing to check something like this. I was not ready for what was to come, however. So continuing on normal, the very first HTR I tried, no exaggeration, you do B prime to give this 2C3 4E case. You have like these two pairs and then these two edges. And to get like the 6 mover shape, you can do R2 and then either U2 or D2. The one that I did was U2, I think because I was just like vaguely looking at blocks, and I did B. Is that correct? Yeah. For some reason I think, yeah, I've written this down sort of inaccurately because I typically always set up to like the 2E version instead of 6E because I just have like recognition. I have very special recognition, I'm a special guy. But yeah, B, U2, F prime, R2, B, and then you can just see like, if you do an L2, it's 2 edges plus slice essentially in 20, which under like normal circumstances in the best case scenario, this can be solved in 2 moves. And the way I found like the 2E insertion was a little interesting. So when I was kind of backtracking and tracing where the edges go, I noticed like at the very start of the HDR trigger, like the B prime R2, it looked like there could be some sort of cancellation there. So this is what the cube looked like after it's as if you've just switched for the DR and have gone back to inverse. So I sort of like went through the moves. So I did like B prime, R2, F, U2.
Wait, did you do the L2?
I did not do the L2. What was the last move I said? Did I do U2? Yeah, maybe it's this. Alright, take 2.
Okay.
Alright, we are back. Technical difficulties have been resolved. So, as I was saying, I just kind of went through move by move, and knowing that there was like a potentially good cancellation there, I just figured it would be easier to kind of arrive at the solution this way. So this is what the cube looks like on normal. You can do L2, B prime, R2, F. Still doesn't look like anything crazy so far. But then when you do U2, it's this case, which I think I outlined in one of the previous solves, where it's like you can make the 2 squares to get the floppy case. And like once I was here, that's essentially just what I did. Like I was like, okay, I know that for this case you want to do this move. It's not in HDR, but you can sort of just see it's like functionally the same. And then you can make these squares and then do like B2, and then B prime, and that gave S slice in 22, which is quite lucky for this HDR subset. Usually like 2C4, I mean, maybe it's not lucky. I feel like you either get plus 11 or like plus 14 and like no in between. But yeah, it solved in plus 0, which was quite fortunate, and that secured me a really strong start for the round 3.
I don't think anyone else found any other good DRs on this scramble. Even my 11 plus 3 was like 23 optimal.
Yeah. I think you ran like a few of them through this, and they were all like...
There's like one that has a really stupid 32, but other than that...
Yeah, half turn, progress, switch, half turn, I sleep.
Okay, so this last scramble is 664. There were like 3 move EOs on this scramble, I think, which is actually quite good. But I went for a 5 move EO as I do. Okay.
Very on brand.
Yeah. So on red inverse, there are 6 bad edges, and they're like here. This is a 5 move EO, and there's a few ways to do this, but the one I did was like this. So I did a U to reduce to U, L prime reduces to 4 bad, and now the remaining case is 3 moves, so I can just do F prime, U to R prime. And this gives me a JCP skip, which is nice. looking at this axis, it's actually a 4E4C, so I thought, okay, this is probably very good. Let's try to switch from this. So if I switch, I end up with this case. Looking at it from the green DR, you see that it's actually already set up to like the funny 4-move trigger for like this particular 4E4C. So D prime, L2. So basically D prime just converts like this pair and corner thing into a line, which is really cool. And then, but the E slice edges are wrong, but that's fine. Just do an L2 to switch them, F2 and then D. That gives me DR in 9 from a 5-move EO. And this case is a 4C3, right? But I'm on the wrong side to like do the QT that reduces it to 4B2. So I switched. So basically my thought was actually the same thing as like we've mentioned this a few times over the past recons, but you switch to inverse, do a QT, come back to normal, try to find like the variation thing that gives you a short HTR, because this D prime L2 F2 thing has a few ways to do it, and you can even extend it and stuff. So I went to inverse, I did a QT, I switched back, and here's what it looks like after I do all that. I don't have to find a variation here because it's already the best one. It's just F prime L2 F to get HTR in like 13 moves. So this case isn't particularly good on like green or anything, but I know that for these kinds of shapes, usually there's some kind of like double slice thing you can do that will give you like a 6 or 7 move finish. So I looked at red and it was actually decent. In fact, I think this is the exact same like red layer case that we've been talking about.
It just keeps falling.
Yeah. So, but I think I did it in a slightly different way for some reason, because instead of doing like L2 F2, I did like D2 first, and then LR. Yeah, here you can see like it's like floppy reduction for red, but I need to get the M slice done, so I did LR U2, and then LR B2, which solves the whole thing. And if you look at this B2 thing, there's a B2 and then it connects right with an F. So technically, you can change this to a 19 to slice, but this is optimal from the slice anyway, and it's also optimal after EO. So yeah.
Good stuff. One comment I want to quickly make. One thing I found kind of interesting about this specific 20 that Wen found is that you can actually make the observation that U on inverse is a good starting move because it produces a 4-bad EO that's solvable with like the half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, like quarter turn move set. I think it's called JEO. I feel weird about it being named after me. I feel like a bit of a douche, like calling it that. But yeah, basically, if you have that and you notice like the next 4 moves, L prime, F prime, U2, R prime, they all don't change like what's kind of going on UD, which means there could actually be a JZP skip.
Yeah.
I think it would be worth investigating how often your corner orientation automatically ends up in JZP or even fake JZP, to be honest. Because I think it could be a useful strategy. Intuitively, I feel like it probably doesn't come up that much. I don't know. Just on the off chance, like someone watching that knows how to program, like wants to do your boy a favor, please do.
Yes, please help. Okay. Okay, so for this one, I actually found another 20. So if you look at white front, it's actually a 3-move EO. It's 4-bad and they're like here. So if I do F2 R prime U, that gives me an EO in 3 moves. And then looking at green DR, you can see that there's an RZP like here, but this one isn't any good. But if I do F to bring this corner here, and then L prime, I guess, this gives me a 4E4C RZP. And I noticed that like this blue and white and this blue and white are matching, and then this blue and yellow and this blue and yellow are matching. So I know that if I switch, I'll have 2 top pairs from this. I know that there's a chance that like other people also found this, but like I know some other people use ARM tracing and they see it's 2C2E, so they don't bother, right? But so when I switched, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really easy case, right? Because 2 pairs and then these 2 corners are like very nicely aligned. It's one more move to JZP basically. So B prime, U2. 2 ways to do this, but I chose L2, F2, R prime because okay, this is a 2E, 2C. It's a 2C3 and it's a 2E, 2C, and I know, and you can kind of tell that. So all the oriented pieces are here, just this like J-shaped thing. So if I just disconnect this corner, it's like set up to the 5-move trigger. So B prime to make it into 4B2, and then it's perfectly set up very well this way. and then B, B to B prime to get HTR in like, what is it, 16 moves? Yeah, 16 moves. And then green looks bad, but if you look at red, it's like very obviously, yeah, this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that cancels 2 with like the L prime on normal. So that's another 20, but I mean, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, with that concludes the, what was it, 20.78 mean of 9 Woj.
Yeah, that's insane.
We're goated.